Doomhammer was speaking with one of his lieutenants, Rend Blackhand of the Blacktooth Grin clan, when a scout came running up. Though the orc warrior clearly had news to import, he stopped several paces from them and waited, catching his breath, until Doomhammer glanced in his direction and nodded. "Trolls," the orc announced, still gasping. "Forest trolls, a full war party by the looks of it." "Trolls?" Rend laughed. "What, are they attacking us? I thought they were smarter than ogres, not dumber." Doomhammer had to agree. The one time he had encountered forest trolls, he had been impressed and a little disquieted by their cunning. Though the trolls were taller than orcs, they were leaner and more agile, particularly in the forests, which made them a significant threat within such places. Crossing the waters to reach this island, however, did not match what he had seen of their behavior. But the scout was shaking his head. "Not attacking. They're on the mainland and they've been captured," he grinned, "by humans." That got Doomhammer's attention. "Where?" he demanded. "Not far from the shore, along the hills just within the forest," the scout answered promptly. They were marching west, though it was slow going for them. "How many?" "Close to 40 humans," replied the scout. 10 trolls." Doomhammer nodded and turned back to Rend. "Gather your strongest warriors," he instructed, "and quickly. You leave at once." He glowered at the Blacktooth Grin leader. "Be clear, however," he warned, "that this is a raiding party only. You are to rescue the trolls and bring them back here with you. Avoid being seen as much as possible, and kill any who do spy you. I will not have our battle plans ruined because you were careless." The chieftain nodded and departed without a word, moving quickly toward a warrior lounging nearby. Rend began barking orders even before he had reached the other orc, and the warrior quickly straightened, nodded, and ran off, no doubt seeking his fellows. Doomhammer waited impatiently, signaling the scout to wait as well. His hands flexed in anticipation, but his mind was far away, back many months to his previous encounter with trolls. Blackhand had shocked the other orc clans back on their homeworld by declaring his intent to ally with the ogres. It had proven a useful partnership, the monstrous creatures lending considerable strength to their horde, but it still went against the grain. Thus many had been skeptical when they heard reports of similar creatures here on this new lush world, and Blackhand had announced they would win these creatures to their war banner as well. He had sent Doomhammer and a handful of other Blackrock warriors to make contact, a sign of the trust he placed in his young second. Even now, Doomhammer felt guilty about that, for he had betrayed his war chief's trust and turned on him, killing him and taking his place as leader. Still, it was the way of the clans, and Blackhand had been leading their people to their own death and destruction. Doomhammer had been forced to act in order to save them. He reached back and down, running his fingers along the smooth stone head of his hammer, where it hung across his back, the handle high over his shoulders and the head down beside his thigh. Long ago, a shaman had prophesied that the mighty weapon would one day see the salvation of their people. They had also said, however, that the wielder who saved them would also doom them, and that he would be the last of the Doomhammer line. Doomhammer had wondered about that many times, and even more so since he had become war chief and leader of the Horde. Had his taking control meant their people's salvation? He certainly felt that to be the case. But did that mean he was also destined to doom them afterward, and that his line would end with him? He hoped not. At that time, however, Doomhammer had not been as concerned with such matters. He still trusted Blackhand, at least the orcs' leader's loyalty to their people and intent to see them masters of this world, and still followed the war chief's orders, though he did his best to moderate Blackhand's love of unnecessary violence. Not that Doomhammer shrank from combat, and as with most orc warriors, he delighted in the exertions and the thrill of battle. But there were times when too much force could actually reduce the value of a victory. This mission, however, had involved communication rather than warfare, and Doomhammer had been intrigued and honored, and perhaps deep down a little frightened. Thus far they had encountered only humans on this new world, and one or two of the diminutive but mighty creatures called dwarves. If this world had ogres, however, the Horde could find itself with a more powerful enemy than they had seen yet. It took 2 weeks before Doomhammer finally encountered a troll. He and his warriors wandered through the forest where a scout had seen one, making no effort to conceal themselves. As the time passed, they had become more convinced the scout had lied or simply been mistaken, jumping at shadows and then concocting a story to cover his own cowardice. Then one night, just as twilight stretched across their land and threw long shadows under the trees, a figure swung down from the branches high above, dropping silently to the ground just beyond the orcs' campfire. Another appeared an instant later, then another, until the forces found themselves surrounded by 6 of the silent, shadowy figures. At first, Doomhammer thought the scout had been correct, and they were facing ogres, though these were slightly smaller and moved with a silence and grace he had never seen the behemoths possess before. But then a ray of fading sunlight struck one of the creatures as it stalked forward, and Doomhammer saw that its skin was green, as green as his own, as green as the leaves on the trees. That explained why they had not noticed the creatures before. Their coloration allowed them to blend into the foliage, especially if they moved through the branches as they evidently had. He also saw that the creature was taller than he was, and leaner than an ogre, and more proportioned, lacking the overlong arms and oversized hands and massive head of those creatures. And the look of the approaching figure gave him, firelight glinting in its dark eyes, as it extended a spear to prod at Doomhammer, showed a certain intelligence as well. "We are not your foes," Doomhammer shouted, his cry splitting the quiet night. He batted the spear aside with one hand, noting as he did that the head was chipped stone and looked very sharp. "I seek your leader." A rumble came from the creatures then, and after an instant Doomhammer realized it was laughter. "What, you be wanton with our leader, morsel?" the lead creature replied, its mouth splitting in a monstrous grin. They had tusks as well, Doomhammer saw, though longer and thicker than his own, and more blunt from the look of them. He also noticed the creature's hair, which rose in a dark crest above its head. Surely that was not natural, meaning these creatures groomed themselves, definitely not mere beasts then. "I would speak with him, on behalf of my own leader," Doomhammer replied. He kept his hands at his side, open to show he carried no weapon, yet he was wary. He would be a fool not to be. That was fortunate, for the creature laughed again. "We no be speaking with morsels," it replied. "We be eating 'em." And it thrust its spear, no longer a questioning prod, but a hard, swift motion that would have gutted Doomhammer as easily as he might have speared a fish, if he had stood still for the blow. Instead, he twisted away, pulling his hammer free from his back, and bellowed a war cry. The shout seemed to startle the creature, which paused in the act of withdrawing its weapon for a second attack. Doomhammer did not give it time to recover. He leaped forward, hammer swinging, and smashed one of the creature's legs full in the knee. The creature toppled with a howl of pain, clutching the shattered limb, and Doomhammer swung again, a mighty overhand blow that crushed the creature's skull. "I seek your leader," he shouted, turning to face the other creatures, who had not moved during the quick fight, "or I shall kill the rest of you and seek others more willing." He raised his hammers for emphasis, knowing from long experience the sight of its black stone head dripping with fresh blood and matted hair and bone was enough to unnerve most foes. The gesture worked. The other creatures backed away a step, raising their weapons high to show they were not attacking, and then one stepped around the others and approached him. This one's hair was braided rather than cut in a stiff crest, and it wore a necklace of bones around its neck. "You be wishing to speak with Zuljin?" the creature asked. Doomhammer nodded, assuming that was either the name or the title of their leader. I'd be bringing him here, the creature offered. It turned away and disappeared into the shadows without a sound, leaving its 4 companions behind. They glanced at each other and at the orcs, clearly not sure what to do now. We shall wait, Doomhammer announced calmly, both to them and to his own warriors. He set the head of his hammer on the ground and leaned on the long handle, alert but unconcerned. When they saw he was not attacking, the creatures relaxed slightly, lowering their own weapons as well. One even sprawled on the ground, though his eyes tracked the orc's every movement. "What are you called?" Doomhammer asked after several minutes. "I am Cruel Tan," the creature replied. "Orgrim Doomhammer," Doomhammer indicated himself with a thumb, "and we are orcs of the Blackrock clan. What are your people?" "We be forest trolls," came the surprised answer, as if Cruel Tan could not believe they did not know. "A Mani tribe." Doomhammer nodded. Forest trolls, and they had tribes, which meant they were civilized, much more than the ogres. For the first time, he found himself thinking Blackhand's idea might be wise. These creatures seemed more like orcs than ogres, despite their size and strength. What allies they would make! And they were native to this world, which meant they would know its geography, its inhabitants, and its dangers. An hour passed. Then, without warning, shadows separated from the trees and moved forward on large, silent feet, becoming the troll who had left and 3 others. "You be wantin' Zul'jin?" one of them demanded, stepping close enough for Doomhammer to see the beads and bits of metal dangling from its long braids. "I am here." Zul'jin was even taller than the other trolls and leaner. He wore some sort of heavy cloth wrapped around his waist and groin, an open vest of heavy leather. A thick scarf was wound about his neck and covered his face up to the nose, giving him a sinister appearance. This close, Doomhammer could also see that the troll's skin was furred. After a second, he realized it looked like moss. The trolls were green because they were covered in moss. What odd new creatures they were. "I am Doomhammer, and yes, I would speak with you." Doomhammer looked up at the forest troll leader, refusing to show any fear. "My leader, Blackhand, rules the orc horde. No doubt you have seen our people." Zul'jin nodded. "We be seeing you crashing through the trees, yeah? You be clumsier than humans," he commented. "Stronger, though, and armed for battle. What you be wantin' with us?" Even behind the scarf, Doomhammer could see the troll grin, and it was not a pleasant expression. "You want our forest, yeah? You be fighting us for them?" His hands dropped to his sides, and to the twin axes that hung there. "And you be losin'." Doomhammer suspected the troll leader was right, too. The horde significantly outnumbered them, of course, but if all forest trolls were as strong and silent as these, they could strike from anywhere and disappear again. They would cut down any orcs entering this place, and the horde would not be able to move a large enough force through the trees to combat the attacks. Fortunately, that was not their goal. "We do not want your forest," Doomhammer assured the troll leader. "We want your strength. We plan to conquer this world, and we would have you beside us as allies." Zul'jin frowned. "Allies? Why? What would we gain? What would you want?" One of the other trolls said something in a strange, hissing language, and Zul'jin cut him off with a sharp reply. "We need nothing, yeah," he answered finally decisively. "We have our forests. None dare intrude here, save only the accursed elves, and those we be handling ourselves." "Are you sure?" Doomhammer asked, sensing a possible opening. "These elves, they are a race unto themselves, a mighty one?" "Mighty, yeah," the troll agreed grudgingly. "But we be killing them since ancient times, when they first came to this land. We be needing no help with them." "Why pick them off one by one, though?" Doomhammer asked. "Why not march on their homes and destroy them utterly? We could aid you. With the horde behind you, you could crush the elves once and for all and truly hold the forest without contest." Zul'jin seemed to consider that. and for a moment Doomhammer dared to hope the lean forest troll would agree. But finally he shook his head. "We fight the elves ourselves," he explained. "We need no help, and we're not wanting the rest of the world, not anymore. So fighting others will not be giving us anything." Doomhammer sighed. He could see the forest troll's mind was set, and he guessed that pushing the point would only antagonize him. "I understand," he said at last. "My leader will be disappointed, as I am, but I respect your decision." Zul'jin nodded. "Go in peace, Orc," he whispered, already stepping backward toward the shadows. "No troll will hinder ya." And then he was gone, and the other forest trolls with him. Blackhand had indeed been disappointed, and the war chief had bellowed at Doomhammer and the others about failing in their mission. But he had calmed down soon enough and agreed with Doomhammer's own assessment that pushing the trolls might have made them enemies instead of neutral parties, and that they did not wish to do. Doomhammer still regretted the troll leader's decision, however, and he had instructed his scouts to watch for trolls anytime they entered or even passed near the forest, and now that watching had perhaps paid off. Doomhammer watched as the two boats beached upon the island's north shore. Rend leapt ashore at once, followed more slowly by a troll whose hair was knotted into braids. A long scarf was wrapped around the troll's neck and lower face, and Doomhammer grinned with delight. It was Zul'jin himself. "They were penned and chained," Rend reported, stopping only a few feet from where Doomhammer stood. The humans were careless, assuming the only threat in the forest was the one they had already captured. The black-toothed Grin chieftain laughed. "No one who saw us lived." Good. They watched as the troll leader approached. He looked the same as the last time they had met, and Doomhammer could tell from the troll's expression that he remembered their encounter as well. "Your warrior saved us," the forest troll acknowledged, stepping up beside Doomhammer and giving him a nod, a greeting among equals. "They were too many, yeah, and used torches to hold us at bay." Doomhammer nodded. "I am pleased to aid a fellow warrior," he said. "When I heard you had been captured, I sent my warriors at once." Zul'jin grinned. "Your leader be sending you?" "I am leader now," Doomhammer replied, his own grin widening. The troll considered this. "Your horde still seeking to conquer the world, yeah?" he asked finally. Doomhammer nodded, not daring to speak. "We be aiding you then," Zul'jin announced after a moment, "as you aided us. Allies." He extended his hand. "Allies," Doomhammer clasped it. His mind was already a whirl with possibilities. Between the trolls and the horde, Zuluhead was binding to the horde's will. Nothing would stand in their way.
You can